I have some goodies for you today. To hand these out, some pages. Because the other day we're asking for like who's who, the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim. This is a general chart. Now this is, as you can see, the Torah, the prophets, and they call them the Hagiographa. Most people call them the scriptures. It's taken from an old book. So you can see Joshua, Judges, Samuel, Kings. Those are the former prophets. And the latter prophets are Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Yechezkel. You see that? Then there's a group of 12 prophets. You see that in the middle column towards the right side?
Yes.
12 prophets. They're all pretty small. So you can see the number of chapters. It should be, there's 12 of them. It's just number 13 and if you number from 1, starting from Genesis, from Bereshit. So there's 12 of them. Amos lived in Tekoa, where I live. They're called minor prophets just because they're small. You can see how many chapters there are. 14 chapters in Hosea, that's the biggest one, and Zechariah also. But then there's 4, 9, 1. Obadiah is just one chapter. And as opposed to, Yechezkel, Yirmiyahu, and Yeshayahu, 66, 52, 48. You see those numbers of chapters? Mm-hmm. They're much bigger. That's why they're called the minor prophets. Not because they're minor in any way. They're just, much smaller books. You could see the number of chapters in the Torah. The biggest one is the book of Bereshit. Good. Kings 1 and Kings 2, and Samuel 1 and Samuel 2. The traditional account has them as one book. That's why they're listed as one. So you can see the sum total is 24 books. I think I mentioned to you that our tradition says that you can't be a Talmud Chacham unless you're really well versed in the 24 books. I mean, books of the Tanakh. But obviously, if you were to count it yourself, you'd count Samuel 1 and Samuel 2 as 2 separate books. And then Kings 1, Kings 2 is 2 separate books. And the 12 are considered to be one book. You can see that. Number 13. All of those 12 books is just number 13. That's why it's much more than 24, really, if you count each one separately. Now, there's the 3 in the bottom left corner. You see what I'm talking about?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They're called Sifrei Emet. Emet means truth. Or wisdom, if you will. And it's a Rashi Tevot. It's an acronym for Aleph, Mem, Tav, Iyov, Mishlei, and Tehillim. Iyov, the book of Job, Mishlei, the book of Proverbs, and Tehillim, we mentioned it before, there's 150 of them.
And it means truth.
And it means truth. Exactly.
Now, I do have a question about that. So, obviously, the book of Psalms is King David's songbook. Wrote 150 of them. Okay, well, no, he didn't write all of them. He wrote most of them.
Okay.
There's 150 songs, and we understand. Proverbs, I also understand what those are. It has also a lot of, it's similar to Psalms in that way, and there's a lot of praises of God in there.
Well, it's more poetic. In that way, they're similar. That it's poetry as opposed to prose.
And then, but Iyov, Job, is just a story.
Well, actually, it's more of a discourses on philosophy, actually. Written in quite difficult poetic Hebrew. And perhaps that's why they're there together. But they're all, you could say, wisdom literature. Because it talks about philosophy. The story, the framework story of Job, that he had 7 sons, and God, tested him with Satan, and at the end he gets back on 7 but 14 sons, and God declares him to be a tzaddik. That's really the first and the last chapter of the book. But as you can see, there's 42 chapters in the book, and so the 40 chapters in the middle are philosophical discussions back and forth about the meaning of life, about good and evil, about how to understand how God works in the world. Is that clear? Mm-hmm. Okay, then there's the 5 Megillot, the 5 scrolls. We mentioned that they're read on the various festivals, and other writings are Ezra and Nehemiah. You guys are learning. in quite some detail with Rav Michael, if I understand correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Book of and some of it is in Aramaic. So too, the Book of Daniel, most of it is in Aramaic, and the Book of Chronicles we spoke about the other day. How there's a parallel between the Book of Chronicles and the Book of, who remembers? Much of the Book of Chronicles is parallel to
Kings.
Kings. Thank you. Phew, somebody's listening. Okay, now if you're ready, I'll teach you a song because you have to memorize this by Sunday. You guys,
The song or this?
this is the song.
Okay.
Okay.
You know the tune. You know? Help me out.
Y'all better for getting in.
So you know the tune. Now we're going to put on the words. I'll do it much slower so that you can follow along. Bereshit Shmot Vayikra Bamidbar. We repeat. Vayikra Bamidbar. Devarim Yehoshua Shoftim. Shemuel Melachim. Yeshayahu Yirmiyahu. Yechezkel. Hosea Yoel Amos. Obadiah Yonah Micha. Nachum Chavakuk Tzfanya Chagai Zechariah Malachi. Tehillim Mishlei Iyov. Shir HaShirim Ruth Eicha Kohelet. Esther Daniel Ezra Nehemiah Divrei Hayamim. Now you can go up to the heavens after 120 years and say, I know the Tanakh. Right? I just taught you the whole Tanakh. Got it?
Yeah.
Do it one more time so you can learn it. If you want to record it so you can repeat it afterwards.
Hang on.
Get ready.
Wait.
Get ready.
Now, let me actually.
I mean, you have it on the YouTube, of course.
Yeah, but just so that I have my own copy.
Just have your own copy, yeah.
I don't think I could do this.
I
A personal
seriously
copy
think
that's cut
that this is a great party trick, and it's also very useful.
A great
Very
party trick
useful.
for what parties do I get invited to, Rav?
See you.
The Hanukkah
Alright.
party we're gonna have. It's also a great. It's very useful to know what the names of the books of the Tanakh are. Obviously, we're going to talk about the content too, but it's a good place to start. Actually, Ariel's got the right idea, putting it right into his binder. Did you get a folder like this, like Ariel has?
No.
Let me give you one to you now, so that you have your own. But if you want, you can have one of these. The last one, actually.
Can I go get mine upstairs?
No.
Go.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And then you don't have to make holes in it and everything.
Like the clear ones, so I can just look at it like that.
Please leave here today's wonderful memories so that you can remind them whenever you like. Where's Tyra right there?
Amazing. Okay, so I guess we'll wait for Jake to sing it again. He's very skeptical about the tunes.
So why is like Ovadia so small?
Good.
I mean, I
What's your
get,
question?
you know, his older brother Joseph is small. His parents are probably short.
Got it.
I shouldn't make fun of him if he's not here. But why?
No.
Like, why is?
Can talk about it. No, it's not here.
Well,
But yeah, listen. What does it mean to be a prophet? That God came to you and he told you prophecy. It's up to God how many times he reveals them, how much he had to say to you. Right? I guess Obadiah gave him one message, and Yeshayahu gave him lots and lots of messages. And so the book is bigger. If you were a prophet, you'd be lucky to have the word.
Did they
of
live
God
in
come
different
to you.
times? Like
Yes.
Obadiah and
Yes. There's
like is
we
Nebi?
need another chart to show you exactly which prophets prophesied in which era. But in general, we're talking about the First Temple period.
Is Nevi'im
All
a perfect
parallel to
timeline?
Kings and so.
Is Nevi'im a perfect timeline? So when I
Not
see
at all.
this, okay.
No, it's not. Isaiah prophesied during the reign of Chizkiyahu, the king.
Oh, and Isaiah's the son of Amos, so he has to be.
Look at that.
So he has to be after.
Yeah, exactly. And Yirmiyahu, we know he prophesied the destruction of the temple, so he was towards the end of the first temple period. We know that Yechezkel actually prophesied in Babylon.
hang on.
So,
Stone has a timeline in the back.
right, there's many charts you can use. This is a useful one.
Stone has a timeline in the back.
I want to show you, though, at the top, while you're looking it up, look at the top, both on the left and on the right. We have 4 different uses of the word Torah. That people get so confused with that. On the one hand, Torah means, merely the 5 books of Moses, as it says in the center of your chart. However, the word Torah is used for many times the entire Tanakh. Or the second one on the left, top left, it could refer to the commandments, mitzvot, testimonies, statutes, laws, teachings, and worship. It's an all-encompassing word. If you see on the right-hand side, the top of your page, 613 commandments, 248 and 365. They're also called, it's all called Torah. Torah is also studying Torah, reading of the law, study of the Mishnah, Talmud, Talmudic analysis. There's so much that, and the word Torah gets used for all of these different meanings, and you can only tell based on the context what you're referring to. Obviously, if you're talking about Torah, the verses, Nevi'im versus Ktuvim, so then that's what you have in the center of the page. But in general, when you say, let's go study Torah, you don't mean only let's study Chumash, the 5 books. Anything that you study within the Judaic tradition is called Torah. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Show us the chart.
So there's not a complete. There's a couple charts. So there's one right here that's Adam to Yaakov.
No, I'm looking for the
know.
prophets. That's what you asked.
I know.
Did you
I
find that?
What's that?
You read, you figure out what it was.
Timeline.
Okay, so there's a timeline of the monarchy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's the Stone Tanakh,
Where can I get one?
right there.
Bookstore.
They're everywhere. They're the most.
Okay, so I don't think it has.
There's a bookstore down the road here. You don't have to go to the Manny's.
We don't like mine.
Is it this one?
I think so. Yeah.
That's it.
I want to look.
Yeah, the fat one. Okay,
Okay.
it doesn't have it in the back.
So you don't have a chart there.
No. There are a lot of good charts in here,
I can
though.
find one.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So ready to go? You want to hear the song one more time? You guys got to learn it. Seriously.
Record it, please.
Okay, hang on. Sorry.
Ariel, if you record it, you'll have it. You don't have a phone.
I don't have my phone on me.
Without video, it's just you should show the page, not the.
Well,
not
everyone
me
wants to see
singing.
your beautiful face, Rob.
I'm just gonna listen to that one. Yes.
You charge extra for that. Bereshit Shmot Vayikra Bamidbar Devarim Yehoshua Shoftim Shemuel Melachim Yeshayahu Yirmiyahu Yechezkel Hosea Yoel Amos Ovadia Yona Micha Nahum Chavakuk Tzfanya Chagai Zecharia Malachi Tehillim Mishlei Iyov Shir HaShirim Ruth Eicha Kohelet Esther Daniel Ezra Nehemiah דברי הימים. Okay, now you. Ready?
Bereshit Shemot Vayikra Bamidbar Vayikra Bamidbar Devarim Yehoshua Shoftim Shemuel Melachim Yeshayahu Yirmiyahu Yechezkel Hosea Yoel Amos Ovadia Yona Micha Nahum Chavakuk Tzfanya Chagai Zecharia Malachi Tehillim Mishlei
שיר
השירים
ותך
קהלת.
אסתר, דניאל, עזרא, נחמיה, דברי הימים. Good job, good job. Yeah.
Rabbi, I might have a really dumb question. So when we pray in the siddur,
Yeah.
or use the siddur for prayers more to say it better, everything in there comes from somewhere here.
Not necessarily.
No.
No.
Anything that does actually, if you have a Quran like me or one of those, it'll actually say. I'm sure it does in the
It says on
article
the-
as well. It'll say in the margins where it's from.
Many of our,
yeah,
as we looked at the Psukei Zimmer, for example,
Yeah.
many of the,
Yeah, if you looked at, there's something from Chronicles, I think it was.
there was many from the Psalms, lots of Psalms we recite. The actual prayers, which are not just quotes of songs of praise, were written later. As I said yesterday,
Yeah.
the rabbis set a text for prayer, and they made up those words. They didn't.
Just to
it's
clarify,
not part of the Tanakh. Yeah.
That was it was not the Great Assembly that did that.
Well, yes, it was.
It was.
It was correct. Yeah. Second Temple time, men of the Great Assembly, they set down the brachot, and they devised the blessings and the tefillot. Assumption is that's the origin. So this is really the end after the Tanakh period. This is all Tanakh. The last. Who's the last prophet? Does anybody know?
Malachi.
Good. Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. They prophesied at the Second Temple period. They were the last of the prophets.
I would always, okay, that makes a lot of sense because I've been confused between Malachi and Menachem.
Yes, Melachim and Malachi sound similar, but Melech is a king and a Malach is an angel with the aleph in there. So it's actually two separate words.
But
Malachi means my
etymologically
angel.
similar.
I don't know if there is.
Considering how Hebrew works with Shorashim, I'm assuming that
Well,
they.
the aleph is really probably part of the.
Yeah, but it doesn't
the
always do
roots.
that. It doesn't always do that.
It's true.
No,
That's true.
So-
Hebrew is a complicated language. And as you have the 24 books here, I really suggest you learn it off by heart. It's very useful. Even if you want to look something up in the Tanakh, you say, go look up that verse in Amos. Okay, so it's like sometimes when I'm looking up in the phone book, something, remember there was such a thing called the phone book, or anything that's alphabetical. So I still find myself repeating, what I learned in kindergarten, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. So, I, okay, I'm going to look after J and whatever. Same thing with the Tanakh. You open up the book of Tanakh. You can always look in the table of contents, but you should be familiar. And you say, okay, so Hosea, it's the 12 minor prophets. They're coming after the latter prophets. Yeshayahu, Yirmiyahu, Yechezkel. You should be familiar with these guys. Yeah.
For someone like me who's just learning and everything, after I'm done reading the 5 books of Moses, should I just kind of go through each one and read them all?
Absolutely. It's a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think you'll get. It's harder going once you get past the Nevi'im Rishonim, the former prophets. As you can see, after number 9, from number 10 on, it's more harder going. Does anybody want to say what's the difference between 1 through 9 and 10 through 24?
So 1 through 9, it's like the Torah, but I know the Nevi'im Rishonim is like Torah 2 in a way, because it take
Give me a better definition. How is it?
I know that's a bad
how is it
definition,
similar?
but
How is it similar?
Yehoshua takes off right after Moshe dies, which is at the end of Devarim.
Yeah.
So it's
Continues the story.
it's
I
a
hear you.
continuation of the
Yeah.
story.
Mm-hmm.
But after Melachim,
What happens? What's different about
starts to get-
Yeshayahu, Yirmiyahu, and Yechezkel versus the former prophets?
After Menachem, what do you mean?
Right. Number 9 is Kings, right? Number 10
Oh,
is
okay.
Isaiah, Jeremiah, and
Okay,
Ezekiel.
so-
They're different,
Mm-hmm.
and all the other prophets really, all the other books really are much. The major distinction is poetry versus prose. For the most part, the first 9 books are prose, as sort of Moshe was reaching that definition when they're saying it's the storyline continues. There's a story. There's what this happened and then that happened and they conquered this and then they fought with that and they made peace here and then they had there's a lot of politics, but basically it's telling a story. So that's a little bit easier to wrap your head around, even though there's a lot of names and a lot of numbers. In the end of the day, it's prose. When you get to poetry in Hebrew, let alone in English, the translation of poetry, then it's a little bit of a different ballgame. I mean, you can still do it, of course, and you should still do it, and the translations do a great job of giving you the meaning, but it's a different quality of learning. It's a different, you get a lot more help. You're reading a story, you don't need so many crutches as like you do when you're studying poetry of Isaiah. What is it trying to say? So you use a commentary that has an introduction, as a summary of the chapter, tells you what he's trying to say here with all the metaphors is X, Y, Z. Yeah.
Just to clarify, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, those are poetry, or everything for after that is poetry?
Almost everything.
Almost everything past Kings is poetry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. With the exception of Chronicles, of course, as I said, which is pretty much parallel to the Kings. Book of Kings. Ezra and Nehemiah also tell a story that you're studying with Michael, and so that's also prose. Esther also tells a story. Ruth also tells a story, but everything else pretty much is poetry. And it's therefore needs to be studied more than just read. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there okay? I don't speak Hebrew very well.
Okay.
None of us do.
Yes.
Speaking English.
Yet.
Yeah.
Is there I understand that some.
Did you hear that? He says, yeah, you don't speak English either. But okay.
Savage.
Go ahead.
Roasted.
Moshe, yeah, what else?
Some translations of the Tanakh are controversial in the way that they are translated. Stone. How does one who does not speak good Hebrew yet legitimately study the Tanakh in a fulfilling way?
Yeah.
Or it's just not
Commentary.
possible?
Commentary.
There's many translations, and you can compare between them if you really want to. But I don't think that there's too many translations that you'd go so wrong. You know, like the discussion about which translation is better. That's a higher level discussion. For the basic beginner, any translation is fine, whichever one you feel is easier to read. You know, I have nothing against the Stone edition. Is it less precise, more precise? Those are fine details. At the end of the day, any translation that works for you, go for it. Ultimately, when they study, people who study in the university without knowing the full Hebrew, they do have, they look up the words which are difficult. They look them up in dictionaries and they compare what the root is and so forth. But that's for more in-depth study. But on the basic level, read the book, choose a translation and read it. Got it? Okay. Any other questions about the chart? Just when you thought it was simple, I'm going to give you some more detail.
Oh boy.
This is an entire page only about the prophets. And it gives you a little bit more about each prophet. All you have to do is ask Yaakov. I think you were asking that the other day. Who was Joshua? What's going on in the book of Shoftim?
I was kind of like, who are all these people?
Who are all these people? Exactly. So I listened to your question and I brought you this little cheat sheet. And why don't you read for us the title, the opening paragraph, Jacob?
At the top of the page there, the Pentateuch is followed by a section known as the Prophets, containing 19 books. These embrace the entire history of the ancient people of Israel, whose
vicissitudes, yes.
vicissitudes.
It means what happens to them, ins and outs, ups and downs.
They relate from the time of Joshua through the days of Ezra and Nehemiah, a period of almost 1,000 years. These books are subdivided into former prophets, latter prophets, and 12 minor prophets. The order of these books and their authors accords with Baba Barta.
Baba Batra is it's one of the passages in the Talmud. So he's quoting from the Talmud. This is the traditional understanding of the order, and that's what we're studying. Okay, so you see Joshua tells of conquest of Canaan under Joshua and his division among the 12 tribes of Israel. And the traditional authors come here at the bottom. Of course, we don't, they're never signed anywhere, but it makes sense. This was the rabbi's traditional, as I said, understanding. The judges. Ariel, will you read for us the content of the judges?
Yes. Judges. Oh, okay, 7. Contents. The history of the tribes during the period when judges ruled. There were 15 judges. 1. Othniel. 2. Ehud. 3. Shamgar. 4. Barak and Deborah. 5. Givon.
Gideon. It's just hard to read.
Gideon. 6. Avimelech. 7. Tola. 8. Jair. 9. Jeff.
Yeah, the J is many times used to what
Yair.
we, for what we use as a Y.
Yair.
It's Yair and Yiftach.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to read it in Hebrew.
Yeah, go ahead.
9.
Yiftach. That's what I
Yiftach.
said, yeah.
10. Ivzan.
Mhm.
11. Elon. 12. Abdon. 13. Samson. 14. Eli. 15. Samuel.
You might have heard of the last one,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's, as you can see, the next book continues and speaks about Samuel, his origin, activity, and influence. Samuel anoints Saul as the first king of Israel. That's Samuel 1. And then Saul dies at the end of Samuel 1. Samuel 2, what happens? You can look at just going ahead to, it's called number 8, but you can see it's divided into 2 because traditionally it's one book. David assumes his kingdom in Samuel 2 at Hebron. Preparation for rule of Israel, David's rules, his wars, his victories, his conquests, his private life, the rebellions against Nathan and God are the prophets at that time. Who asked who was the prophet at which time? Was that you, Moshe? Who asked who was the prophets at which time?
Yes.
So there you go. You have Nathan and God at the time of Samuel, where it says Shmuel Bet. Then Kings, of course, the annals of the kings of Judah and Israel. David's last testament. He dies right at the beginning of the book of Kings. We read it last week in the Haftarah, if you were paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
Then 2 Kings is the period of the 2 kingdoms continued, etc. The book of it's traditionally the rabbis say that the books of Kings were authored by Yirmiyahu, the same prophet who prophesied the destruction towards the end of that period. And of course, in number 11, in the middle of your page, you have the entire book of Jeremiah. Are prophecies that include, as you can see, divine ethics, morality and prayer, injunctions addressed to the leader of the people, priests, false prophets, lamentations over calamitous destruction of the temple in the land of Israel, words of encouragement and consolation. It's all mixed. Israel's mission, prophecies concerning the fate of other nations beside Israel. Did you know that? The prophets often got prophecy about other nations. You really should read the books. They're good books. You have free time? Read the book. Isaiah also, there's prophecies concerning the fate of nations beside Israel, as you can see in number 10. Now, Yechezkel, number 12, is a little interesting. Norm, will you read for us number 12?
Prophecies of Yechezkel, son of Buzi, visions of God. Prophecies uttered in Babylon, the sins of Jerusalem and its ultimate destruction, laws, injunctions, and consolations for the future, importance of sacrificial worship, unity of priesthood and prophecy, diagram of the future temple and the order of sacrifice.
Yes, it's a really cool book. It's fascinating, a lot about the future temple. The whole description. There's an architectural plan of what it's going to look like. Amazing. It's funny, when they built the second temple, they really didn't follow that. Maybe the rabbis deemed that they should more copy the first temple, but anyways, this was during the after the destruction. He's in Babylon, and what are the 12? Okay, so Moshe, read for us about the 12 prophets.
12 books containing prophecies, injunctions, etc. of the minor prophets, from the first prophets whose works are recorded, Hosea and Amos, through Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, who prophesied at the close of the first temple, in the beginning of the second temple era.
Okay, you want to read Rashi? Rashi has the following comment.
Men of the Great Assembly, authors from the Men of the Great Assembly. Because their prophecies were brief, the early prophets did not edit their own books. However, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, the last of the prophets, realizing that the divine spirit was departing from Israel, wrote down their own prophecies and, subjoining the works of the earlier prophets, put together a large volume less likely to be lost.
Fascinating comment about how they became to be known as one book. The Trei Asar, it's called in Hebrew. The 12. You see that in Hebrew, number 13?
Mhm.
Trei Asar, that's Aramaic, actually. It's not even Hebrew. And it means the 12. Trei Asar is how you say 12 in Aramaic. So the 12 prophets is the name of that book. Is that clear?
Yeah.
It's because Shin and Tuf in Aramaic are often
Excellent.
switched.
Well,
So
that helps somewhat.
Shriata.
Shreyasar. No. Well, the SR stays the same, but the
Yeah.
Tuf ratio is supposed to mean 2, I'm assuming.
Trey means 2. Yeah, Trey means 2. I don't know exactly the etymology of that. Okay, so that's helpful. Now, so we did all the Nevi'im. What's left? What's left?
Kesoivim.
That's right. The Ketuvim. What do you think? I didn't bring you the Ketuvim. I'm going to pay favorites here. Play favorites.
Kesoivim.
So
You're
now,
allowed to.
here you go. Pass
I know
these
I'm your
around.
favorite, so it's okay.
Pass these around. The hagiographa includes maxims, proverbs, ethical preachment, and poetry imbued with the divine spirit. They comprise. How many books are there in the Ketuvim? Is there not one? Is there not?
Oh, sorry. I got it.
You got the extra? Okay.
Sorry, Rabbi, sorry to interrupt. What's a maxim?
A maxim is like it's like a phrase which becomes a catchphrase. A maxim is like a short a short phrase. Yeah, that's what I would call it. Yeah,
I don't know how to explain.
yeah, it's a short phrase which
Can you give me an
Like-
example of a maxim?
love your neighbor.
I gotcha. Okay, a little saying.
A little saying, exactly.
Thank you.
Even like don't steal.
Sure.
It has like a deeper meaning to it now.
Would the 10 Commandments be called a
We get it.
maxim?
They may be 10 maxims.
10 maxims. Gotcha.
Usually they're
Do you
short.
think they're
Usually they're short.
universalizable maxims?
Yeah, something like that.
No. It's not okay.
They comprise 11 books. 11 books? How many were there in the prophets? Who remembers?
19.
19. And this is 11. And how many books of the Torah are there?
5.
So 5 plus 11, plus 19 is
24.
24. Wait, so what's this 11 coming? There's only 19 if you count all the 12 as 12.
But they're one.
Well, we count them as 1, and that's why the sum total is still going to be 24. Anyways, so this number is including all the small ones separately. So they comprise 11 books. Psalms, Proverbs, as you can see, the list. The sages viewed the 2 books of Ezra and Nehemiah as one book. Did you notice that? Ezra and Nehemiah is one book?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Interesting.
They work together. Chronicles 1 and 2 also one book.
It's really interesting.
So,
Yeah.
what is the difference if I was studying, like, let's say, Bereshit?
Yeah.
And I stick it side by side with Chronicles,
Mm-hmm.
and I just read the story of creation in Chronicles versus the story of creation in Bereshit. What's the difference?
I'm going to flip that on you and tell you to do it. Open up chapter 1. Not now, but do it afterwards. Open up Chronicles chapter 1. Not now. Not now. But
I'm going to open it.
after class. And then read it and tell me what you'll know yourself, what the difference is between the stories in Bereshit and the way it's told in Chronicles. I think you'll find it very quickly. Let's look at this this chart now. The wisdom books. So Tehillim we spoke about. You can see that it's attributed to David and 10 different elders. Adam, Melchizedek, Avram, Moshe, Haman, Yedutun, Asaph, and 3 sons of Korach. Many different authors of the Tehillim, but they're collected and in general they're attributed to David. Mishlei, aphorisms, words of wisdom attributed to Solomon, wisest of all men, and to other aphorists, e.g. the sages in Chizkiah's circle. Chizkiah, one of the kings of Israel, so it was the first temple time. Eov, I told you, just spoke about before. The 5 scrolls, they're read at different times. Which holiday do we read the Song of Songs on?
Shabbat.
some people say it every Shabbat, but each one of these scrolls is associated with festival, one of the festivals.
Yeah.
Shir Shirim is read on Pesach. Ruth is read when?
Hold up.
One of the most famous converts that we have. It's read on Shavuot.
Oh, okay.
Pesach, Shavuot, and what do we do on Sukkot? We do Kohelet. That's the fourth one. Ecclesiastes is called in English.
Oh, sorry, wait. Kohelet is
Ecclesiastes, number 20.
and read.
And read on Sukkot.
Oh, Sukkot.
On Sukkot. And the other two, when are the Esther, you know when it's read.
Purim.
Purim and Lamentations. When is it read? The book of Eicha in Hebrew.
I'm assuming it has to be on a holiday that had not been mentioned yet. Am I correct there?
Read the contents, please, for us, Moshe.
Oh, destruction.
Yom Kippur.
Wait, no.
No.
Dude,
Kippur is not a day of
oh,
mourning.
it's not a. Oh,
Shiva Sabbatanos or
Close.
Shabbat.
There you go.
Wait.
Tisha B'Av is the day of the destruction. We read
Shabbat.
Tisha B'Av, the ninth of B'Av. Book of it. Authored by Yirmiyahu, as we said, he's known as the prophet of the destruction. And the other writings, the last ones there's Daniel. Wow, that's like the most interesting book of the. It's all sorts. You can't understand it. Some of it.
Because it's in Arabic.
No, even if you have a translation, you can't understand what he means. He's got all sorts of visions of strange things, and it's hard to understand what they are.
Did Rashi did the whole Tanakh? Didn't
Yeah,
he?
he did.
Okay.
We do have Rashi. We do have commentaries. I'm not saying it's
So
impossible.
is that helpful?
Of course, it's helpful. Very helpful. But you can see he's got historical traditions of messianic visions. A lot of the Christian fundamentalists love the Book of Daniel. They think they understand what it means and which day the Messiah is going to come or come again.
Reading
as they
reading a translation from 1611. Of course, they understand it.
say.
1611.
That's when.
That's when Jimmy had his finished.
I'm not kidding you. Okay, it's not a secret. Why do you have to whisper that? I mean, what you just said.
Okay,
It's not
the
good.
King James version was finished in 1611, I believe. That's
Okay.
a
That's one translation. Okay,
Yeah.
but since pretty much since this has been written, it's been translated. Okay, Ezra and Nehemiah. You can see the history of the Judea in the days of Ezra, building of the Second Temple, return of Zion from the Babylon exile. Nehemiah, as you can see, Chronicles. A complete resume of early Jewish history, beginning with the creation of man and ending with the proclamation of Cyrus, king of Persia, permitting his Jewish subjects to rebuild the Second Temple and return to Zion. Begun by Ezra, completed by Nehemiah, the Book of Chronicles was collected by them. So this is some good stuff, some good charts. And should we do the song one more time?
Yeah, sure.
Yes?
Sure.
Because then I could say I taught you all Tanakh. Yaakov, you with us?
Yes,
I know
sorry.
you're fascinated by the charts, but
I'm learning so much right now. My brain is like this. Yeah, sorry.
excellent. You're in the right place. Bereshit Shmot Vayikra
Midbar, Vayikra Midbar, Devarim,
Yehoshua
Shoftim,
Shemuel
Melachim, Yeshayahu, Yirmiyahu, Yechezkel,
Hosea
Yoel, Amos, Ovadia, Yonah, Micha, Nahum, Chavakut, Hagai, Zechariah, Malachi, Tehillim, Mishlei, Yom, Shir Hashirim, Ruth, Eicha, Kohelet, Esther, Daniel, Ezra, Nehemiah, Divrei Hayamim. Pretty good. When my son was 10 years old, he was a great avid reader. The one who just got engaged. Now he's 25. This is an old story. When he was 10 years old, he loved reading. And he was so frustrated because all the children's books that we gave him to read, took out of him in the library, he'd be done within, half an hour. He's such a quick reader, such a good reader at the age of 10.
So he says, you know what I want for my birthday? I want a 1,000-page book. What am I going to do?
Buy him it.
What am I going to do? So I bought him 2 books. I looked in the stores. What book has 1,000 pages that's appropriate for a 10-year-old? I didn't know what to do.
It by Stephen King.
I don't know that.
War and Peace.
Yeah.
Crime and
So that's
Punishment.
not really appropriate for a 10-year-old.
Neither
Anyway,
is it.
so I bought him 2 books.
Tanakh.
Tanakh was one of them. It's about 1,000 pages if you add them all together. And how many pages is
This one
edition
goes
have?
up to 2,000.
Oh, because it
More
has
than 2,000,
translation.
'cause
He
that's
read it in
translation.
the original. He knows Hebrew. I don't know how much he understood, but at the age of 10, but he read the whole thing. And he also, then I bought him a second book, the trilogy of the Lord of the Rings. And he read them both.
It's nice.
Great
Very
kid.
good.
A lot of fun. Anyways, now he's quite a scholar. He's finished Shas, Baruch Hashem. And
Finished what?
Shas.
What does that mean?
Shas stands for Shisha Sdarim, the 6 orders. So the 6 orders, as I mentioned to you before, it's the categorization, the book written by Rabbi Nasi, the Mishnah, Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, and then the Talmud. All the Talmud on that follows the same pattern as the 6 orders of the Mishnah. It has a 37 out of the 63 Masechot have commentary of the Gemara. But anyways, that's also in the current versions that we use, the standard editions. It has over 3,000 pages, and now he's finished that. In fact, quite a few years ago, he read through the entire Talmud. Pretty bright kid. Yeah. I try to keep up. Okay, so this is our charts. We'll give the other guys who are not here now, we'll give them out a little bit when they come.
Mhm.
But I'd like to show you one more thing that I mentioned the other day. I mentioned the other day that there was something called the Masorah. The Masorah I mentioned to you, you can hand these around. They all have, this is just, I took this from the Hefker, by the way. This is a beautiful version of the Mikroot Gedolot. Just share 2, 1 on each side, because this I'm going to show you. So take a look.
I don't need to.
I'm just showing you the structure, really. Oh, there is an extra one? Okay. Yeah.
Our pages look a bit different than your pages.
They're not so different. Not so different. It's just a question of how many commentaries are on that page.
Okay.
But what I'm showing you is, this is a standard edition of the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim, which we just read about. And in the middle, of course, the big letters is the text in Hebrew. Now, what you have right next to it in the parallel column, also in the middle section, what is that? Anybody?
That's the
What is it?
It's in Aramaic.
Good for you.
Oh, we're
It's
talking about
known
that.
as Targum Onkelos.
I see.
It's the translation to Aramaic. So the text itself is in Hebrew and a parallel translation to Aramaic.
And the Aramaic is so that we can understand it. Correct?
Exactly. Now, listen, it's the earliest commentary on the Tanakh. It's from Onkelos lived in Tannaitic times, I believe.
Wow.
Tannaitic times. That's like just a few hundred years after the Bible was codified, canonized. So that's the earliest parish. We have Rashi, famous commentary, which is on the inner margin. You can see at the top of the page it says Rashi. And almost all of the Tanakh, like you said, there's a commentary on all the Tanakh. Here's a commentary that's on the top middle margin. He lived in the 1100s. We're talking about 1,000 years later. So you have on this page the commentary of into translation into Aramaic, which itself is a commentary. Every translation is a commentary, but that's like much the earliest Jewish translation that we have, and therefore the earliest commentary that we have. Rashi oftentimes quotes Onkelos, the translation of Onkelos, and he deals with it and explains what he means or differs sometimes. But so all around you have different commentaries. Underneath it, in this version, you have the Ralbag, on the other side, the Radak. It depends on which book, which commentaries you have. Mostly you have Rashi and the Radak. What do you have in your? You also have Rashi. It says on the top. What does it say?
Rashi.
And the other side is.
It says Rashi.
On top. Look on top. The big letters on top.
Yeah, I am.
Parallel to Rashi, what does it say? Not in the middle. The middle, it says which book it is. On the left-hand side, on the right-hand side.
Evan Ezra.
Even Ezra, good. That's what I was looking for.
Who's
This one, we have his commentary on the Torah in English over there in the Chumash section. He lived in the 14th century, and in Spain, and very famous commentary. Wrote a very famous commentary on the Torah. He was a big one of the medieval Rishonim, we call them, earlier commentators. 200 years after Rashi, but he quotes Rashi and the Onkelos. And then he makes his, comments and where he differs or where he agrees and why and so forth. He was well known for his his Hebrew language skills. Yeah.
So of all the antiquated commentators on this Tanakh, which are the ones that I need to know about?
All of them.
All right.
But what I wanted to
So
show
are
you
they?
before you close the book, that's not what I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you in the middle, in between the Hebrew text and the Aramaic translation. What do you see in the margin in between those columns?
Rashi letters.
These little letters, right? With some chupchiks, some little accents next to them, and then sometimes it just turn the page and you'll see. Sometimes they get a few more words, right? What's going on there in the middle of that? These are the Masoretic notes. Masora. We mentioned that the other day. These are the notations which these scholars in the 8th century, 9th century, they made these notations to ensure the integrity of the text, so that it wouldn't get corrupted. They write. This is the only time the lamed, for example, which is the most common notation, stands for leta, which means there's no other word in the entire 24 books of the Tanakh that is spelled exactly this way. There's no other, and that's very common. Many words are unique and spelled the way they spelled and the way they're each letter is written. Many times you'll find that that's the only time it appears in the Tanakh. And then there's other notations, and that way you could, of course, ensure that if there's another word which is very similar, but you see that it's spelled the same way, that's a mistake. One of them has a vav, one of them doesn't have a vav. So this is the Masorah. This is called the Masorah Ketana, small one, because the bigger one I said is that doesn't appear in this volume. It's more complete references of the Bali Masorah. This is the Ketana, and on top or at the bottom you would have the Masorah Gedola, the bigger Masoretic notes. But anyways, this is cool. I wanted to show you. We mentioned it the other day that this was a system devised 1,500 years ago to ensure the integrity of the text of the Tanakh. Okay, question? Yeah, Yaakov?
A little bit of tangential question. When it says like eight, like for example, when you're reading like the 5 books of Moses, and it says like 18:6-28. Does that mean like I guess the 20 is the pasuk, right? Is that what it is?
The first one is the chapter,
The chapter.
and then it was pasuk,
That's the
1
chapter,
through
and that's
5.
Pasukim. This is chapter 18, pasuk 6 through pasuk 28.
6 to 28. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, and my question about it is like, were the chapters were just like they came along, like they.
Now that's a good question. That's a good question.
Like were the chapters given to Moses when he?
So now open up your book again. Any page really.
Which book? Sorry, this book.
This book,
Sure.
the Nevi'im, and we're all looking at a different Navi. But you're going to notice in this one, at least, you can find it on the page on here, that there's paragraphs. Paragraph breaks. You see that? Sometimes there are a few. There's an empty space in the middle of the line.
Yeah, and then it goes to Aleph.
Sometimes it starts a new chapter.
Oh.
Sometimes it doesn't.
Okay.
Sometimes you have a paragraph break without starting a new chapter. Turn the page. Take a look. Look at a different page. Each page usually have 1 or 2 paragraph breaks.
Yes, I see that.
Those are very ancient. Those are considered to be given to Moses at Sinai. The paragraph breaks. However, they were not numbered, and we never had a numbering system of chapters. What we had was paragraphs. They're called in Hebrew parashot. Not what you all know, Parshat HaShavua,
Mm-hmm.
of which there's, how many Parshat HaShavua are there?
Those called Parshiot. No, Parshat.
They're interchangeable. It doesn't help. We don't have a specific word that's used only for one or the other. But those are the way we divide the Torah to read it up once a week and finish it once a year. So there's, I think, 54 Parshiot.
I was about to say 54.
I
Yeah.
think there's
I
54.
counted them yesterday.
Amazing. Good for you. Did you?
Yeah, I
Good.
was like, I went through the
Excellent,
index.
So in the average year, sometimes you're going to have to join up a few Parshiot because how many weeks are there in the year?
52.
52. And then sometimes you'll a holiday will fall out on Shabbat. And when a holiday falls on Shabbat, we don't read the regular Parsha of the week. We don't proceed. And so you have to make up more than just 2 Parshas a year. Usually you have to make up 4 or 5. So
But
we join a few Parshas together. But that's not what I'm talking about now. That's the Parsha Tashavua,
but there's
which
a
you've heard of
system,
before.
right?
What you've never heard of before is what I'm telling you right now. That these paragraphs that are very, very ancient, the Torah was given with the paragraphing, they're called also parashot.
Mhm.
There's 2 types, we won't get into that now. But those parashot is all we had. We didn't have chapters. The chapters, we would just refer to the first word maybe of that paragraph,
Mhm.
but there was no numbers until a priest studying the Tanakh. I think he was in the 16th or 15th century, maybe a little earlier,
So pretty recently.
very recent in the scheme of things. He said, "This is ridiculous. We can't reference the same verse and the same chapter." And he made up the chapters and the verses that we have,
Mm-hmm.
and he was right. It's very useful, and so we use it. Although it's a Christian origin, and many times, if you look at the first break in Bereshit, at the beginning of the Torah, we read usually the entire 7 days of creation as one unit. And he decided to make a chapter break after the first 6 days. Chapter 2 starts with the day of Shabbat. It's very strange. Why did he do that? Ask him. I don't know.
What was
But-
his name?
I can't recall his name. You could look at it. You can Google it. Chapters of the
Wait, was he-
Bible
was he
created
Jewish?
by. No, he's a priest.
This is in Bereshit. Yeah.
Yeah, look at Bereshit chapter 2. It starts with the 7th day.
It start. Oh yeah.
Look at that. Isn't that strange? If a Jew were to do that, he for sure would.
Why don't
Complete-
Jews make their own
include
version of the
Shabbat.
chapter system?
So we have a little bit of a system, but in the end of the day, some people want to go back to it, but it's not so well known.
Interesting.
and,
I didn't know
so-
that. I didn't expect my question to yield that answer.
Yeah. So the
Interesting.
chapters and the verses, therefore, are all a later addition, but they're
Mhm.
so useful, so we use them. Just because they're useful, but they don't have
Something
any
to look at.
holiness to them. The actual holiness is the paragraph breaks, and there's 2 kinds of paragraph: a small paragraph break and a larger paragraph break.
Oh,
And if a Sefer Torah is written without the correct paragraphing,
Mhm.
it's not kosher. Everybody knows it. If the Sefer Torah does one letter wrong, the whole Sefer Torah is invalid.
Well,
But they don't know that it's just as invalid if they got the paragraphing wrong, because those are considered to be very ancient
just to
Jewish
clarify,
practice.
sorry.
Clarify now. Thank you, question.
As you just said, the paragraph breaks are what's holy,
Yes, correct.
but the chapter breaks are not.
Mhm.
But
That's
so
right. They're just useful.
so just to clarify, before there were chapters introduced,
Mm-hmm.
those were paragraph breaks.
Correct.
But then they kind of became unholy because they became chapter breaks. My
They're not
understanding,
unholy. It's just
less holy.
No, it's not less or
They're-
more holy. It's just useful or not useful.
Interesting.
So-
Okay,
Okay.
that's cool.
It is cool. Thank you. Moshe.
So,
Go ahead.
I've seen these before. Like it's a excerpt from the Torah, the physical Torah,
Yeah.
and it's like covered in ink or whatever, or there's a problem and there's a rip, and so it's just not kosher. So, but so if there's a problem with a sheet, a physical sheet of parchment in the Torah, it's just unsewn, removed, and replaced with one that is kosher, sewn back together, and the Torah's kosher again.
True.
Correct.
True. Yes, you
That's
could
why
do
they
that.
do it.
Okay.
You could do that. It's much cheaper than rewriting a whole Sefer Torah.
How do we
It's not
view
fun.
the Dead Sea Scrolls?
So it's an amazing find. It's an amazing find. The Dead Sea Scrolls, as they're known, it's a collection of old scrolls from the Second Temple time. Some of them include, as Moshe explained the other day, the oldest complete version that we have of some of the books of the Bible. There's also some books which are not in the Bible, which were from other sects in the Second Temple period. We know that there's the Essenes and all sorts of different, very strange. We call them strange now because they're not. They didn't make it to be standard Judaism, but they were like really pious, people that were monks, and they lived in the desert, and they didn't speak, and they didn't, all sorts of strange practices. So they had all sorts of holy texts. They were scribes. This was one of the big part of their religion, is to write down texts. So it's an amazing find, and of course the version of the Yeshayahu that they have, we compare it to the version we have.
It doesn't match up.
It does. It does. Almost not 100%. Almost 100%. It's fascinating. But there's the entire scholarship around it, exactly, understanding. But for sure, yeah, you can see the scrolls that are on display in the Israel Museum. It's called the Shrine of the Book. It's
the actual
cool,
scrolls themselves are on the
cool
ground
architecture.
display.
They are.
No, I
Some
think
of
they're
them are.
reproductions.
I don't know about that. I have to check. I haven't been there for a couple of years, but it's fascinating to go see them. And yeah, as I said,
my laundry.
you got to do what you got to do. Okay, other questions? Yeah, we follow, when we write a Tanakh, we follow the Masoretic Text, not the Dead Sea Scroll text. Because the Masoretes gave us all these notations to tell us exactly how it should be written. And that's the most authoritative text that we have, is the scribes. They didn't have the printing press till the 15th, 16th century. So it was all manuscripts. So each individual scribe was writing down would follow, hopefully follow the Masoretic notes as clearly as possible. And if any changes would creep in, you could check it against these reference notes. It's a very cool system. And that's why we have very little variation in our text for the last 1,000 years. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Apologies, you just mentioned this, so I stepped out. What's the difference between the Masoretic Text and the Dead Sea Scroll text?
So there are a few. Just the first of all, the Dead Sea Scrolls don't have the entire Tanakh. It's just a few passages, a few books. Famously, the book of Isaiah is the biggest of the scrolls that we have. Isaiah, yeah, you see where it is in the prophets?
I'm gonna look at it right now.
That's it.
If you go on Wikipedia, there's a chart on the Wikipedia page of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's a breakdown of what books they found, what are the exact pasukim that are written there, and then there's also.
And what are the differences?
Yeah, what are there's
from
there's
the Masoretic text?
There's I mean Wikipedia is just Wikipedia, but there's commentaries on like what there is, what they think. So some of them there's like they're small pieces. So what they think they are.
Right.
Well.
The text is corrupt. It's been a couple thousand years. It's hard for that. We're very lucky that there was any of the scrolls preserved whatsoever because of the dry climate in the Dead Sea. So the amazing finds. But we follow our traditional Masoretic notes over what we found in the Dead Sea Scrolls for the purposes of Torah.
So they had different format of writing it, or what?
Also,
were they
the font
Yeah.
was different.
Oh,
Sure,
okay.
it's ancient Hebrew font. It's
The authors were they Jews?
Aleph looks different. The bet looks different, but we can figure out what it is.
Right.
So
Were the authors Jews in the same way that we think of us today?
not in the same way that they were Jews. They were just various sects of Jews. I don't know if you've ever heard about this problem. Jewish people have trouble agreeing on anything. So there were all sorts of groups.
Well, I'll disagree with you on that. But.
groups that broke off. The ones that won out, they say at the time, that was the temple. The ones in charge of the temple, they were like the political leaders, and they had all the power.
Yeah.
And so the people who disagreed, they left. They went to the Dead Sea to live on their own, so they could do whatever they thought was the correct version of
So hot there.
Judaism. Oh, it's insane. Yeah.
That's
Interesting.
You were just there last week.
Yeah, we were there.
The Machon Meir went on a teal to the Dead
Yeah.
Sea. You floated.
You
and
didn't
you
join.
weren't there.
I
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah. You've been there before, though.
Yeah.
Everyone's been there, but like,
Did you float?
I went in
yes,
there.
you
had the
swim out to the
biggest-
salt island. It's really fun.
I had
Cool.
the biggest blister on my toe. I went in.
Oh,
and-
No,
you
I had
swam
a,
over to it.
I had a scrape on my lower back. Oh, it burned, but it was so fun to float the Dead Sea. I didn't mind, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. If you have cuts, that's not a good place. Anyway, so please hand back the Nach. And I see that Yoshua, although he was going to give us a Torah on the Parsha, he couldn't make it. He's a meeting at the Ministry of Interior, trying to get his visa in order.
Yes.
So I'll say something on the Parsha, if you don't mind, in the last few minutes that we have left. As it is Thursday, and we're getting ready for Shabbat.
Parsha Toldot.
Parsha told us.
Toldois.
I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah,
Have
please.
you like memorized all the parshas in order in your head?
Yeah, I'm going to give that to you too.
Uncle Moishi has made
I'll give you a
some
song.
wonderful songs.
I'll give you a song for it.
Okay.
I have a chart for it too,
There are different ones. So take one of each.
and you can do that too. It's very useful to know the order. of the
I
I
Parsha.
feel like
Sing
my
the song.
brain space is
Sing it when I,
occupied by
when
just
I teach it to you. I'll
No,
do it another
oh,
day.
you
I'll
mind.
give you the actual text so you
Ariel.
can
Pass,
follow along.
Ariel,
the
pass
song.
one of the.
Which one? Which one's missing?
The song
Sorry,
right now.
It's fine. It's fine.
No, pass one to Hirsch.
Which one? Yaakov,
Oh,
which
the
one?
first one. The first one.
The first one.
Yeah.
If I can find the Uncle Moishi songs, because I'm sure
I
we
feel
all know
like
who that is.
Also good.
Yeah,
My brain space
No,
is occupied by
But
like.
Rabbi
miscellaneous
Menachem is also
pharmaceutical
okay. You
drugs.
know, his version is
Mussolini's pharmaceutical.
a lot, huh? It's a
What are you
lot of
talking about?
material at once.
Like all the
Why
stuff.
are we taking fascist narcotics?
No, it's
What are you talking about?
miscellaneous.
Oh, miscellaneous. I'd say Mussolini. Sorry. My apologies.
So I'll just give you a short thought. You know, throughout the Sefer Bereshit, there's this issue of who was born first. The firstborn. It doesn't start here with Yaakov and Esau. Before that, there was who was before Yaakov and Esau? Who were the children of Abraham?
Hello?
Yitzchak and
Yitzchak and
Isaiah.
Oh,
No,
Ishmael.
Excuse me, Ishmael.
But actually, even before the first Jew, Abraham, even before that, we have the story of fratricide,
Cain and Abel.
Cain and Abel.
I read that like 2 days ago.
Amazing. It's a good story. So we see that this idea of one brother being chosen over the other brother is a major theme. Goes throughout the book of Bereshit and afterwards as well. And the standard, and it's backed up in some of the mitzvot of the Torah, is that the eldest brother gets primacy. In the ancient world, the eldest would take over and run the household after the father would pass away, and so he had more responsibility, and therefore he would get a double portion. What happens in our parsha, as you all know, the rest of the Torah is the story not of Esau, but of Yaakov and his children. And Yaakov is famously not the eldest. He's the younger brother, even though he might be holding on to the heel of Esau. Esau was born first. And I believe that the Torah is telling us, God is telling us something in the Torah with all of these stories. And he says, what matters is not who's born first. What
Who says
matters,
this, sir?
me. I'm interpreting what the Torah is trying to tell us. And over and over and over again, the firstborn doesn't get the primacy. It goes on with Yaakov's children as well. Reuven is the firstborn, but he doesn't become the leader.
Who becomes the leader?
There's actually two chosen, Yehuda and Yosef.
I haven't read that.
So I have a question.
Same thing happened to my
What
friend.
would you title the shiur? Mishnah and
We're already
or
done.
Fundamentals.
Fundamentals with Rav Weinberg.
Yes. Thank you.
You have this class every morning.
So I think the message here is that God chooses not based on your birth and the givens, determined. It's determined before you were born whether or not you're going to be the chosen one or not. It stresses that it all depends on what you do and how you act, and that gives all of us hope, even though we don't have royal blood. Well, we have royal blood because we were born Jewish, or some of us who weren't born Jewish, they joined the Jewish people. But what matters is not so much your blood or your lineage. What matters is your actions and how you serve God, how you perform and continue this relationship with God, this covenant that He gave the Jewish people. And what determines our prominence is how we fulfill our role in that chain of tradition, not so much how we were born or brought up even. It's about becoming a tzaddik. It's becoming a good Jew to the best of your ability, and that's our job. And this is just a little idea from the Parsha. It's really an idea that could accompany us throughout the entire book of Bereshit, and really throughout the entire Tanakh too. The chosenness, it's up to you. It's up to you. You have free choice to fulfill your role and your mission in as a Jew, or unfortunately, maybe not to. So I wish you and yours Shabbat Shalom, and Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll see you Sunday morning bright and early after the little break. You have a wonderful Shabbat. Enjoy.
Shabbat Shalom.